Have you ever felt that invisible weight, surrounded by people, yet still feeling like no one truly understands you? As if an unseen chasm lies between you and the world, a distance no words can bridge. This feeling, which many fear and flee from, was understood by Carl Jung in a strikingly clear way. He recognized that loneliness isn't simply the absence of company, but often the result of an extraordinary sensitivity, a sensitivity that finds the noise and superficiality of the world unbearable. Yet, within this solitude lies a special power. It may be painful, but it holds the potential to guide us on a journey back to ourselves. Jung teaches us that the deepest insights, the strongest authenticity, and the most genuine connection with ourselves are often found only in silence and seclusion. Solitude doesn't mean being lost. It can be a path to discover inner strength and build an unshakable relationship with yourself. If you've ever felt unseen or misunderstood, know this: you are not alone. And more importantly, this feeling can be the first step towards a freedom you might not yet have known. In this freedom lies a strength that depends neither on others nor on external circumstances. It's precisely this journey we want to explore today. Carl Jung teaches us that solitude isn't just an escape, but often a conscious choice, a retreat to protect the self and search for deeper meaning. Many who embrace solitude are misunderstood by society, labeled as strange or unsociable. Yet, often behind this decision lies a profound wisdom, a realization of what truly matters. Think about how often relationships, conversations, or obligations emotionally exhaust us without giving anything valuable back. Solitary individuals have learned to detach from such dynamics. For them, solitude isn't a sign of weakness, but an act of self-care and protection of their own energy. In silence, they find clarity, and in distance from the world, they discover their true identity. Society may glorify sociability, measuring people by the number of their friends or social activities. But what if we're missing an important truth right there? What if a treasure lies hidden in silence and solitude that only a few truly know? What if solitude isn't isolation, but a return to oneself? Jung shows us that solitude is an invitation to rediscover yourself. It offers the opportunity to heal the wounds of the past and develop an inner strength that no external judgment can shake. People who choose silence are often those who have realized that true happiness lies not in the external, but within. Perhaps it's time to stop viewing solitude as an escape or a weakness, but rather as an opportunity to see the world with new eyes. Tell us in the comments, what does solitude mean to you? Let's explore the secrets of solitude and the wisdom of Carl Jung together. Solitude is often seen as a burden, yet in truth, it's an underestimated gift. In the silence it brings, a richness reveals itself that many people fail to perceive. When we leave the noise of the world behind, we discover something rare and precious: the freedom to be entirely ourselves. Imagine a space where no expectations are placed upon you, where you don't have to wear a mask, and where your decisions belong only to you. In this space, the true power of solitude reveals itself. It frees us from social constraints and allows us to discover our authentic self. In the stillness, we find a clarity that often eludes us in the bustle of everyday life. Have you ever felt the need to escape the pressure of meeting others' expectations? Solitude is exactly that refuge. It gives us space to sort our thoughts and regain our inner balance. It grants us the opportunity to focus on what truly matters, free from distractions and external opinions. It's as if solitude opens doors to an inner universe we often forget. In this calm, there's also the possibility to recognize our true desires and goals. How often do we put our own needs aside to avoid conflict or please others? Solitude frees us from this dynamic. It shows us that we can make our decisions freely, without having to justify ourselves. This freedom strengthens our self-trust and teaches us that we are enough, independent of external influences. Solitude is also a powerful means of emotional calm. In the company of others, we unconsciously absorb their energies and problems, which can drain us. But when we are alone, we can free ourselves from this burden and gather new strength. It's not an escape, but a form of self-care. By allowing ourselves this break, we can renew ourselves and return to the world strengthened. Have you ever experienced a moment of complete clarity where everything suddenly made sense? Such moments often occur in solitude because there we hear our own voice without distractions. These moments are valuable because they give us direction and show us what's truly important. The stillness of solitude is like a mirror reflecting our true self. However, solitude is not just a retreat, but also an opportunity to discover new interests and passions. Free from external obligations, we can dedicate ourselves to projects that bring us joy or develop skills that fulfill us. It gives us the freedom to unleash our creativity and shape our lives according to our own visions. Society may glorify sociability, but solitude teaches us a different kind of strength. It shows us that we don't need external validation to recognize our worth. Solitude is not weakness, but a sign of inner strength and self-acceptance. Perhaps we should stop seeing solitude as something negative, but rather as a valuable opportunity to get closer to ourselves. In a world that constantly distracts us, it's an invitation to pause, reflect, and grow. It gives us the opportunity to shape our lives with new clarity and authenticity. And have you already experienced the transformative power of solitude? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's together discover the deep wisdom hidden in silence. Because sometimes it's precisely solitude that connects us most deeply, with ourselves and with what truly matters in life. Pain in human relationships can arise in many ways. Sometimes it results from the betrayal of someone we trusted, other times from unfulfilled expectations, broken promises, or words spoken in a moment of anger. And then there's that subtler yet equally potent pain that results from estrangement. People who were once by our side suddenly seem to live in a completely different world. The connection that once existed dissolves, and we are left with an emptiness we don't know how to fill. In such moments, we realize how vulnerable we are in the hands of others. And this vulnerability, as terrifying as it may be, is what makes relationships so intense. Because even when we know we might be hurt, we continue to seek connection, open ourselves up, and try again. For some people, however, the burden of negative experiences becomes too great. They reach a point where solitude is no longer seen as isolation, but as a refuge, a place where they can finally find peace, away from expectations, demands, and disappointments. They discover that there's something deeply restorative about being alone. It's as if by retreating from the world, they are giving themselves a chance to finally breathe and heal. And perhaps you're wondering, is it really possible to live without human relationships? The answer is complex because as social beings, we need connection. But we also need balance, and sometimes that balance requires us to withdraw, to find strength in solitude before opening the doors to the world again. Human relationships are a constant exchange of energy. When they work well, we feel invigorated, motivated, and loved. But when they get out of balance, they can exhaust us, make us insecure, and question our own worth. The impact of these relationships isn't limited to the present moment. They leave traces that we carry for years, perhaps a lifetime. That's why it's so important to carefully choose who we let into our inner circle. It's not about closing off your heart, but about learning who truly deserves to be by your side, who brings light and not shadow, who strengthens us instead of weakening us. Perhaps you've already experienced the weight of a toxic relationship, that feeling of constantly walking on eggshells, never sure if you're understood or criticized. Perhaps you felt the pain of loss, the separation, watching someone you love take a path you can't follow. These moments change us. They force us to reflect on what we truly want and need. And sometimes the answer is simple. We need peace. We need relationships that are a sanctuary in the storm, not the storm itself. And if we don't find that in others, solitude becomes a friend, an ally, reminding us that we can find comfort and joy in our own company. The effects of human relationships are inevitable. They shape us, challenge us, teach us, but above all, they show us the importance of finding balance. Because ultimately, we seek a life that makes sense, where the connections we have are not a burden, but a source of energy and inspiration. And if that balance requires moments of solitude, then so be it. For in the stillness of solitude, we often find the clarity that allows us to return to the world with a lighter heart and a stronger soul. If you haven't liked this video yet, please do so now, because we're about to get to the best part of this discussion about solitude and the psyche. Carl Jung saw solitude as more than just a state of being alone. For Schopenhauer, Rousseau, and Thoreau, it was a key that opened the door to true freedom, self-understanding, and a deeper connection with something greater than ourselves. Imagine walking through a forest, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves, and in the distance you hear the murmur of a stream. No one is around, just you and nature. This scenario, which seems empty to many, was seen by these thinkers as a sacred space, a refuge where the human spirit can breathe freely. Have you ever felt completely free, without the pressure to please others or meet their expectations? That is the essence of what these philosophers saw in solitude, a pure freedom where we are the sole masters of our thoughts and decisions. Schopenhauer viewed solitude as liberation from the distractions and constraints of the world. For him, constant companionship with others was like a prison of superficiality, where conversations were often empty and connections rarely authentic. He believed that by withdrawing from this constant search for social validation, we find something far more valuable: the opportunity to delve into ourselves. He said that only in solitude can we think independently, without being influenced by the opinions of others. And when you think about it, that makes sense, doesn't it? When we're alone, we can hear our own voice without the noise of the outside world. In this silence, great ideas are born, and the answers to the deepest questions come to light. Rousseau, on the other hand, saw solitude as a way to reconnect with the human essence. He believed that society, with all its rules and structures, alienates us from our true nature. For him, being alone in nature was like returning home, to a purer and more authentic state of being. Rousseau loved to walk alone, observing the world around him and reflecting on life and its complexities. He said that in solitude, he felt closer to himself and in harmony with the universe. Have you ever experienced that feeling, that when you detach from the chaos of everyday life and immerse yourself in a moment of calm, everything suddenly seems clearer? That is exactly what Rousseau was talking about, the magic that happens when we allow ourselves to simply be, without having to adapt to external expectations. Thoreau took this idea even further. He didn't just appreciate solitude, he actively sought it. In his famous experiment of living alone in a cabin by a lake, which he detailed in his book Walden, Thoreau proved that simplicity and solitude can be immense sources of inner richness. He believed that by distancing ourselves from the hustle and distractions of the modern world, we find a deeper connection to nature and, by extension, to ourselves. Thoreau viewed solitude not as something to be feared, but as an opportunity for growth and reflection. He said that in solitude the mind becomes clear, thoughts align, and life appears more meaningful. These philosophers understood something we often forget in our fast-paced world. Solitude is not an empty space to be filled, but a space to be explored. In solitude, we find time to ask ourselves who we truly are, what we truly want, and what truly matters. It's a state that allows us to slow down, breathe, and see things from a new perspective. And perhaps you're asking yourself now, what if solitude isolates me and separates me from others? What these thinkers teach us is that solitude, when consciously chosen, does not mean separation, but reconnection. Reconnection with our roots, with our values, and with what truly makes us feel alive. They also show us that solitude is fertile ground for creativity. Great ideas, significant works, and profound insights often emerge in moments of aloneness. Think of the moments when you had your best ideas. Weren't they often times of silence when your mind could wander freely and explore without interruption? That's the beauty of solitude. It gives us space to think, create, and dream. And, contrary to popular belief, it doesn't separate us from the world, but prepares us to return to it with new strength, greater awareness, and more wholeness. Perhaps it's time to see solitude through different eyes. Instead of viewing it as something to avoid, we could embrace it as an ally, a teacher who teaches us to cherish our own company. Because ultimately, if we don't learn to be at peace with ourselves, how can we truly connect with others? Solitude, as these philosophers show us, is not just a state of being alone. It is a journey of discovery, freedom, and authenticity. And, if you allow it, it can be one of the most transformative experiences of your life. Solitude, in the context of religious traditions, is like a gateway to a deeper understanding of life and the self. In Buddhism, it's not viewed as a state of abandonment or empty isolation, but as a powerful tool to achieve inner peace and, ultimately, enlightenment. Imagine a moment where you feel completely disconnected from the noise of the world, free from the constant distractions that modern life brings. In this silence, Buddhism sees a golden opportunity, a space where the mind can settle and the soul can align with something greater. The Rhinoceros Sutra further deepens this idea by comparing the spiritual path to the solitary march of a rhinoceros, an animal that doesn't need constant company to find its way and survive. This sutra serves as a guide, a reminder that sometimes we need to detach from everything that binds and confuses us to truly understand ourselves. Life, with its countless connections and attachments, often traps us in cycles of desires and expectations that obscure our spiritual clarity. This is precisely where Buddhism invites us to follow the example of the rhinoceros, to walk alone, detached, and courageously, without depending on others. Perhaps this sounds difficult, even unpleasant. But in truth, this solitary path can be incredibly liberating. When you remove yourself from the constant hum of society and external influences, you begin to hear your inner voice clearly. It's as if you're cleaning a dusty mirror, finally seeing your true reflection without distortion. The Buddha taught that attachment is one of the main causes of human suffering. And, let's be honest, the more we cling to things, people, or ideas, the more vulnerable we become to disappointment and loss. Solitude, in this context, is not a rejection of the world, but a way to learn to live in it more wisely and balanced. When you choose to be alone, even for a short time, you give yourself the chance to temporarily release yourself from these bonds and experience the freedom of pure being. Imagine how liberating it would be not to constantly feel pressured to meet others' expectations, to keep up appearances, or to seek validation. Solitude teaches us that true strength comes from within, and that we don't need external support to find our inner peace. The Rhinoceros Sutra holds a powerful message about letting go, which goes beyond simply being physically alone. It's about letting go of worldly worries, of fears that plague us, and of illusions that trap us in limiting thought patterns. When you wander alone, like the rhinoceros, you learn to trust yourself, appreciate your own company, and find beauty in simplicity. And it's precisely in this simplicity that the greatest truths reveal themselves. When you allow yourself this space of solitude, you begin to perceive things you missed before, small details, profound insights, a sense of connection with the universe that is hard to describe, but brings incomparable tranquility. Buddhism teaches that enlightenment is not something you find outside yourself, but something that awakens within you. And solitude is one of the most direct paths to reach this state. By distancing yourself from external distractions, you create space for introspection, to reflect on your actions, thoughts, and intentions. This practice not only brings clarity, but also strengthens your emotional resilience. allowing you to face life's challenges with more calm and wisdom. For once you've experienced the deep peace of solitude, you know that nothing in the world can shake this state of inner balance. There's also something profoundly spiritual about being alone in nature, as the Buddha often did. He withdrew from villages and towns to meditate under trees, by riverbanks, or in caves. These moments of solitude allowed him to transcend worldly concerns and connect with the essence of life. Have you ever imagined being in such a place where the rustling of the wind in the trees and the chirping of birds are your only companions? For the Buddhist, such a place is not just a retreat, but an invitation to connect with the purest and most essential part of oneself. Nature, in its simplicity, reflects the impermanence of all things and teaches us to embrace the present moment, without fear of the future or regret over the past. When the Rhinoceros Sutra speaks of being alone, it doesn't mean we should break all human bonds or live in isolation forever. Rather, it reminds us of the importance of moments of solitude to strengthen ourselves and grow spiritually. Just as the rhinoceros walks its path with determination but without haste, the Buddhist practitioner is encouraged to pursue their spiritual path with resolve, but also with patience and self-compassion. These moments of solitude are like necessary breaks on a long journey, moments to catch our breath, reevaluate our direction, and continue with more clarity and purpose. Solitude in Buddhism is seen as a state of freedom, where the shackles of social expectations break and the mind can explore its true nature. The most beautiful part is that when we embrace solitude, we don't become more distant from others, but more understanding and empathetic. For by understanding ourselves, we can also better understand others. And when we find peace in our own company, we can carry that peace into the world around us. So, allow yourself to experience this solitude, this silence that speaks louder than any noise. A whole universe waits to be discovered within you. Social interaction is like a river constantly in motion. It connects us, challenges us, teaches us, and often comforts us. But have you ever noticed how constantly being around people can shape us in ways we might not even perceive? Social life is full of expectations, isn't it? There's a certain pressure to conform, to be accepted, and to meet others' expectations. It's almost like wearing a mask, a polished version of who you truly are. Over time, this mask can become heavy, even making us wonder if we still recognize ourselves behind it. Have you ever considered how often you've said or done something just to please, to avoid conflict, or to fit in with a group? This is where the value of solitude comes in, a state that, contrary to popular belief, is not empty, but full of possibilities and, above all, full of authenticity. Solitude gives us permission to be our true selves, free from the shackles of social expectations. When we are alone, no one is watching, no one is judging, and there is no need to play any role. It's as if we can finally take off tight shoes after a long day and simply relax. In this state, we begin to connect with the parts of ourselves that we may have neglected or forgotten. We realize how much social life, as important as it is, can sometimes distance us from our essence. Constant interaction can be like background noise that prevents us from hearing our own inner voice. When we finally withdraw and immerse ourselves in solitude, this noise quietens, and a clarity emerges that previously seemed impossible. This is not to say that social life is bad, quite the opposite. It offers us rich experiences, moments of joy and connection, and teaches us a lot about the world and ourselves. But without balance, it can become exhausting, draining us instead of nourishing us. Solitude, on the other hand, offers us something that social life often cannot: a space for reflection, growth, and the exploration of our own thoughts and feelings without external influences. It's as if we step into a quiet room after being in a noisy place. Suddenly, everything seems clearer and sharper. You can hear your own thoughts, feel your own emotions, and, most importantly, begin to understand what truly matters to you. Interestingly, contrary to what many believe, Solitude doesn't separate us from the world. It prepares us to interact with it in a more authentic and conscious way. When we spend time alone, we get to know ourselves better. And the better we know ourselves, the more secure and confident we become, and the less we are influenced by the expectations of others. Solitude is often misunderstood, seen by many as a lack or a deficit. Yet, it holds a transformative power. In the stillness it creates lies the possibility of encountering ourselves in a deeper way. When we leave the external noise behind, we discover what truly drives us. It's a journey to authenticity, an opportunity to view life from the inside out. Have you ever noticed how social interactions change after you've spent time alone? They often feel lighter and more natural, because you are acting from a place of inner clarity and strength. Solitude gives us the chance to free ourselves from societal expectations and focus on our own values. In it, we find not only peace but also the freedom to make decisions without the constant evaluation of others. The personal growth made possible by solitude is unique. It is a space where we can organize our thoughts, explore our dreams, and recognize our true selves. This time with ourselves requires courage, because it confronts us with questions we often avoid in everyday life. Yet, it is precisely this confrontation that can be the beginning of a life based on our own convictions, free from external constraints. Of course, social life also has its place. It gives us connection, exchange, and often joy. But solitude is the counterpoint that connects us with our inner world. Both are important, but their value lies in balance. Solitude should not be an escape, but a conscious choice, a pause to recharge and understand oneself better. Have you ever felt alone in a room full of people? This is one of the most painful forms of solitude, when physical proximity does not align with emotional connection. In such moments, it becomes clear that true connection doesn't depend on the number of people around us, but on the depth of our relationships. And sometimes, solitude is the first step to recognizing which connections are truly meaningful. However, solitude can also become dangerous if it lasts too long. What began as a sanctuary can turn into a wall that cuts us off from others and ourselves. In such phases, it is important to reach out, seek support, and reconnect with the world. For we are social beings, and human connection is an essential part of our well-being. The art lies in finding the right balance between solitude and social life, between inner peace and outer exchange. This balance is different for everyone and changes over time. It is important to recognize the signals of our body and mind and respond to them. Solitude can heal us if it is consciously chosen, but it should never become a burden. So, the next time you feel you need time to yourself, allow yourself that break. It's not a sign of weakness, but an act of self-care. And if you feel that solitude is taking over, don't hesitate to seek the connection you miss. True strength lies in knowing when to be alone and when to need the closeness of others. Solitude is not an enemy, but an opportunity. It offers us the chance to live our lives more consciously and to step into the world with greater clarity. And it reminds us that even when we are alone, we are never truly abandoned, because in the silence we find the connection to ourselves that no one can take away. Self-knowledge helps us find balance. It shows us when it's time to seek company and when we need the stillness of solitude. But this quest for balance is neither easy nor automatic. It's a continuous process that demands we look inward, question what truly benefits us, and what we accept only out of habit or fear of change. This honesty with ourselves, while challenging, is also one of the most liberating experiences we can have. Imagine life as a scale, with solitude on one side and social life on the other. Keeping this scale balanced doesn't mean both sides always have to weigh the same. There are moments when you need more solitude, when the world feels too heavy and you need space to breathe and reorient yourself. On other days, it's social interaction that brings energy and joy, filling an emptiness that only human connection can fill. And that's okay. What's important is to recognize these moments, to know what your body and mind need right now, because an imbalance in either direction can come at a high price. If we isolate ourselves too much, we can get lost in our own thoughts, spiral into self-criticism, and feel disconnected from the world. On the other hand, if we plunge too deeply into social life without pauses for introspection, we risk losing our individuality, forgetting our priorities, and becoming prisoners of others' expectations. The balance between solitude and social life is dynamic, which is why continuous self-reflection is so crucial. Have you ever noticed how sometimes we are surrounded by people and yet feel an emptiness? That happens because it's not just about being with others, but about truly connecting, being present. And for that, we need to be at peace with ourselves. Solitude, when well utilized, gives us this opportunity. It gives us time and space to process our emotions, to recognize what we truly want, and to strengthen ourselves. It's not about avoiding people, but about engaging with them in a healthy, conscious, and fulfilling way. Social life can be incredibly enriching. It brings us joy, learning, and a sense of belonging. But it also holds pitfalls. We are often guided by an almost instinctive need to please others, to be accepted, and to be part of something. In doing so, we sometimes sacrifice important parts of ourselves. It's easy to get lost in the expectations of others, to neglect looking inward, and to not ask ourselves, does this really make sense for me? Does it help me grow, or does it just exhaust me? Self-reflection allows us to ask these difficult but necessary questions. More importantly, it gives us the courage to act based on the answers we find. Self-knowledge is not a state we achieve once and for all. It's like a muscle that needs to be exercised regularly. Every experience, every action, every moment of solitude offers us the opportunity to learn something new about ourselves. And the better we know ourselves, the clearer our boundaries, our needs, and our desires become. This helps us live more authentically, in accordance with who we truly are, instead of constantly adapting to external expectations. The beautiful thing is that our connections with others also become more honest as a result. We no longer seek validation or try to conform. We simply are ourselves. And that creates space for genuine, meaningful relationships. Finding this balance requires patience. It requires a willingness to endure moments of discomfort, because the path to self-knowledge is not always easy. It challenges us to confront our insecurities, fears, and weaknesses. But it is precisely in this confrontation that growth lies. Solitude, in this process, becomes a powerful ally. It gives us the space to think, feel, and connect with what truly matters. At the same time, social life offers us the mirror we need to see how our actions and words influence the world around us. One does not work without the other. In the interaction between these two worlds, we find our center, our point of balance. Have you ever experienced a moment where everything seemed to make sense, where you felt a deep peace that nothing could shake? Such moments often occur when we are in balance, when we are in harmony with our inner and outer needs. And the truth is that each of us carries this ability within us. The challenge is to learn to listen, to trust our own intuition, and to give ourselves what we truly need, even if that means saying no to external demands or overcoming the fear of being alone. The balance between solitude and social life is an art, a continuous practice that requires attention, care, and above all, self-love. Self-knowledge is the foundation of this journey. It gives us the tools to navigate the waters of life with more clarity and confidence. And by finding our balance, we not only become stronger, but also better able to give the best of ourselves to others. Because ultimately, we all want to lead fulfilling lives, connected with ourselves and the world around us. So, allow yourself this journey. Explore your solitude, celebrate your connections, and find the rhythm that makes your heart sing. Solitude has a transformative power that few truly understand. It can seem daunting at first glance, especially because we've been conditioned to believe that being alone is negative, a kind of failure or inability to maintain relationships. Yet, the truth is that solitude, when embraced with courage, has the ability to save us, to reconnect us with our true selves, far from the expectations and demands of the world. Recognizing the necessity of solitude isn't easy. It requires a deep level of honesty with oneself. It takes courage to admit that some of the relationships we nurture aren't good for us. Even harder is accepting that sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to detach. And while that may initially seem painful, it's the first step towards emotional freedom. Solitude becomes even more necessary when we find ourselves in relationships that harm us more than they benefit. Have you ever been in a situation where, despite the presence of others, you felt exhausted and empty, as if your energy was being drained? This burden goes beyond the physical. It's emotional and mental. Some connections rob us of our essence, make us doubt our worth, and trap us in a cycle of emotional dependency that keeps us bound. Having the courage to break free from such situations is an act of self-love, but also an act of survival. Because staying in a toxic or abusive environment not only exhausts your soul, but also stifles your true inner voice, that voice you need to grow, heal, and rediscover yourself. The courage to embrace solitude springs from the moment you realize that your inner peace is worth more than any company. It's the insight that the temporary pain of withdrawal is far smaller than the prolonged suffering caused by remaining in suffocating relationships. This is precisely where the beauty of solitude lies. When consciously experienced, it's not a dark abyss. On the contrary, it's a space of renewal, a time when you can breathe deeply and rebuild the worn-out parts of your soul. In solitude, you discover what truly matters, what brings you genuine joy, and what you can leave behind. It allows you to gently examine your wounds and heal without external pressure. And this healing, as quiet as it may be, possesses immense power. It's important to understand that solitude is not synonymous with permanent isolation. Often, it's temporary, a necessary phase to reorient ourselves internally. It's like closing the doors of your house during a storm. You protect yourself, warm yourself, and prepare to reopen those doors once the storm passes. When you do this, you'll find that you are stronger, more self-assured, and better prepared to carefully choose who you allow into your life. Because once you've experienced the calm and peace of solitude, you won't accept just any company. You'll become selective, not out of arrogance, but because you understand the value of your energy and your inner peace. Solitude also teaches us to appreciate our own company, something often underestimated. We live in a society that constantly encourages us to seek validation from others, but rarely teaches us to find solace within ourselves. When you embrace solitude, you learn that you don't need external recognition to feel complete. You discover that you can be your own source of strength, joy, and peace. And that's something no one can take away from you. This emotional self-sufficiency becomes a foundation that supports all your future relationships. For the better you know yourself, the easier it becomes to set healthy boundaries, say no when necessary, and withdraw without guilt when something doesn't align with your values. Of course, the path to embracing solitude is not without its challenges. At first, there may be moments of discomfort, perhaps even fear. After all, we're used to filling every moment of our lives with distractions, voices, and external noise, so silence can feel intimidating. But it's precisely in this silence that you begin to hear what truly matters. There, your intuition gains space to unfold, and your true needs come to light. With time, you'll realize that this silence isn't empty, but full of potential. It's a space where you can dream, plan, and reconnect with your passions and goals. It's the fertile ground where self-knowledge can flourish. There's something deeply liberating in the realization that you do not need anyone else to find happiness or meaning. Solitude shows you that you are enough, just as you are. And when you understand that, something within you changes. You begin to connect with others from a place of abundance, not from a sense of lack. Your interactions become lighter and more authentic because you're no longer trying to fill gaps or seek validation. You simply share your energy, without expectations or demands. This shift in perspective changes everything. Suddenly, you realize that solitude, far from being a burden, is an ally who is always by your side when you need a moment to breathe and find yourself. Of course, not everyone will understand your decision to embrace solitude, especially if it means distancing yourself from people or situations that superficially seem good. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that you're taking care of yourself, protecting your energy, and giving yourself the opportunity to grow, in a way that might not be possible if you continued to hold on to what hurts you. By doing so, you create space for new things, for healthier connections and a life that aligns with your true self. The courage to embrace solitude grows with every decision to put yourself first. Every time you say no to something that doesn't serve you, every time you prioritize your inner peace over the opinions of others, every time you surrender to silence without fear, little by little this courage transforms into strength, self-confidence, and the unshakable certainty that even in the most solitary moments you are exactly where you need to be. For solitude is not an end, but a beginning, an invitation to know yourself deeply, to heal, and to love yourself unconditionally. Emotional self-sufficiency is one of the greatest accomplishments a person can achieve, and yet one of the most underrated. We live in a world where connection with others is often portrayed as the center of happiness. From an early age, we learn that we need others to feel complete, and that being alone is a sign of weakness or an inability to maintain relationships. But nothing could be further from the truth. True strength, true peace, and true freedom emerge when you learn to be comfortable in your own company. Emotional self-sufficiency doesn't mean rejecting the world or avoiding relationships. It means understanding that you are enough, and that your happiness and inner peace do not depend on others. It's a state of mind where you find security and strength within yourself, and that changes everything. It changes how you see yourself, how you interact with others, and how you face life's challenges. Being comfortable in solitude is the first step to developing emotional self-sufficiency. Solitude has a power that few understand because most fear it. But what many don't realize is that solitude, when used voluntarily and consciously, is a space for healing, growth, and reflection. In solitude, you have the opportunity to detach from the noise of the world and connect with yourself. Think for a moment. How often do you truly take the time to hear your own thoughts and feel your own emotions, without the influence of external opinions or judgments? In solitude, you find clarity. It gives you the chance to organize your mind, to question yourself, and to get to know yourself on a deeper level. And when you start to understand yourself, you become aware that many of your pains, insecurities, and fears stem from an emotional dependence on others, from the expectation that someone else will fill the gaps that only you can close. Emotional self-sufficiency doesn't mean you have to avoid relationships or isolate yourself from the world. Quite the opposite. It means you enter every relationship on a solid foundation, knowing that your happiness doesn't lie in someone else's hands. That takes the pressure off relationships and makes them lighter, more authentic. You no longer seek something in the other person that you lack within yourself. You simply share your abundance, your peace. This changes the dynamic of every relationship. You become less willing to tolerate toxic behaviors or settle for less than you deserve. Because when you know you are enough, when you are comfortable alone, you realize you don't need anyone to be complete. You choose who enters your life, and you make that choice consciously, not from a sense of lack. Perhaps you've experienced this already. Perhaps you've been in relationships where you felt your happiness depended entirely on the other person. Or you clung to people or situations that weren't good for you simply because the fear of being alone seemed unbearable. Now, imagine the opposite. Imagine feeling so secure within yourself, so peaceful in your own company that the fear of being alone disappears. Imagine having the ability to detach from any relationship or situation that doesn't respect who you are, without guilt or insecurity. That is emotional self-sufficiency. It's a power that allows you to approach life with courage, protects you from getting lost in connections that drain your energy, and prepares you to form healthier and more meaningful relationships. When you embrace solitude and learn to enjoy it, something profound begins to happen. You realize that there are answers in the silence. In the absence of other voices, your own becomes clearer. You begin to see what truly matters, what your values are, what your dreams and true priorities are. This clarity brings a sense of purpose that is hard to describe. You feel more in tune with yourself, more confident in your decisions, and perhaps most importantly, more at peace. Because when you are no longer emotionally dependent on someone else, you free yourself from expectations, games, and disappointments that often accompany unbalanced relationships. You no longer seek in the other person what you lack within yourself, and that is one of the greatest liberations you can experience. The journey to emotional self-sufficiency can be challenging, but it's also one of the most rewarding you can undertake. Every step in this direction is a step towards a more fulfilling, authentic, and free life. And on this journey, you'll discover something surprising. The person you've always sought to bring you happiness and security has been with you all along. It was you. It was always you. And when that truth reveals itself, everything changes. Let's explore this further together, because emotional self-sufficiency holds many more secrets. It's the foundation of a fulfilling life, and a whole world of possibilities awaits you when you begin to build this stable foundation within yourself.